Thank you. So my name is Bill Spencer. I manage the large account relationships for Microsoft Teams. And joining me in today's presentation are Christian and Ruby, two colleagues from a company named Valorum. So they'll be helping demo Microsoft Teams, the hub for teamwork in Office 365. And you may be asking yourself, why do I need yet another collaboration tool in Office 365? I have Outlook and SharePoint and Yammer and Office 365 groups. Well, what we're hearing from our customers is that another tool is needed. And the only reason you need another tool is to save time. So Teams is a real time saver. And it comes down to, the demand for more complex projects in the marketplace. So Teams is a great tool for keeping a group of people, many of whom may be remote, maybe on a different shift or a different time zone, and to bringing everyone to the same page. So Teams is the fastest growing version 1 enterprise product in Microsoft's history. So we already have millions of users, 3 million teams created in 200,000 accounts, different customer sites, in 181 countries. And today Teams is available in 39 languages. So it's a great way to keep a project team together no matter what device they use, no matter what time zone they're in, no matter their location, as long as they have access to the internet. So Teams is written as a cross-platform product. It is a web service that is wrapped for the Windows and Mac desktops. So we simultaneously ship the same features on Mac, Windows, and the web. And it's also available in a native iOS application and Android application. So it's great on an iPad, great on an Apple phone, iPhone, or an Android. And then in terms of the browsers, I particularly recommend Edge and Chrome because on those browsers you can join a meeting or a conference call and no plugins are required. So it's a great way of collaborating inside and outside your organization. So these are the design goals for Microsoft Teams. First, it's the one place for all of your team activity. And it's really a powerful notion that all of this information is not only available in Teams, but it's also pulling together information from the Office graph. And I encourage all of you to try the Who feature, the WhoBot, as a chat service in order to test out this type of integration. But it pulls together chat, apps, and meetings, and it integrates all of the Office 365 applications on a logical basis, based on what project teams you're working on and what specific tasks or topics are involved in each one of those teams. So instead of thinking about your work from an application perspective, like, oh, I need to work with data, I'm going to go into Excel, rather you think, I'm working on this particular customer account, or I'm working on this particular development project, and I go to that team, I go to that chat room or channel for that project, and all the information, whether it's a conversation, whether it's a PowerPoint presentation, or data that could be from a Microsoft application or a third-party application, it's all available right there in the channel for me. And I mentioned third parties, so it's customizable with over 200 third-party services today, as well as for a generic secure HTTP or HTTPS, a URL. Any service so configured can be added as a tab within Teams. So you really can bring in most types of information that people are working with today. And finally, it's all based on Office 365 security and compliance. So all the data in Teams is encrypted at rest and encrypted over the wire. It supports the EU model clauses and HIPAA, and we have independent audits from ISO and SOC showing that Microsoft Teams is really the most secure group chat application available. And because it's can be administered with the rest of Office 365, it offers the lowest cost of ownership because it's easy to administer. And if you do add guests to your teams, you can add them at no additional cost. Up to 500,000 or 500,000 guests can be added by each Office 365 tenant at no additional cost. So it's a great solution. So now I'm going to actually demo the product, and I'm going to ask Christian to take over the desktop. I mentioned Christian and Ruby are from a company named Valorum, and they have a great solution for automating sales forces that a number of our customers are using. Another thing to mention, when you are using guest access on Teams, I encourage you to join another browser client for Teams. It's a lot easier to switch between different tenants when you don't have to worry about information that might be stored in your cookies specific to the authentication on your tenant. So whenever I'm a guest on another tenant, I either use my mobile device or I'll use the browser, and I'll have it in anonymous or in private mode. So the Edge and Chrome browser are particularly good at this, and I recommend you consider that if you want to be a guest on another tenant. All right, so thank you, Christian. So we have the basic UI here, and I just want to go through the three major regions of Teams, starting from left and moving to the right. So on the left side, there's a dark purple column called the App Bar, and choosing one of the applications in the App Bar, it populates the next two regions, the white column, which is called the left rail, and the light blue area called the main arena. Now on the app bar, you can see we have activity, chat, teams, meetings, and files, and then further down there's the store. And I encourage you to click on these different options. The store is particularly interesting to see all of the third-party services that are available in Teams. And the white column lists the teams that that Chris is a member of. I notice a few people are having problems watching the video right now, and sometimes when we switch from my presentation to Christian, there's a little bit of a challenge on picking up the next video. So I recommend that people close the Skype for Business session and then rejoin, and then they'll typically be able to see the demo just fine. So again, we're talking about the left rail as those people are exiting and joining, and we see that Chris is a member of two teams, the marketing team and the sales operations team. And just think of a team as like a distribution list for the 21st century. So it is a list of people, and then beneath that is the list of projects or topics that that team is working on. So whenever you create a team, there's always a general channel created, and that's the default that's immediately below the team header. And the team header, you can see it has an icon, so a green icon for the marketing team, or the yellow icon for the sales operation team. You can also tell a team header because it has the obvious ... on the right side of the white column, and that is the More menu. And here it's pretty obvious, but almost every object in Teams has a More menu that is accessible usually by hovering on the right side of the particular object. So you'll see that as we go through it. Now in the left rail, you can have any number of teams, so there's no limit to the number of teams you can be a member of. Each team can have as many as 250 channels, but more importantly, each team can have as many as 2,500 members. So you can have quite a few members on a team. But for many large organizations, you can't have the whole organization on one team. And that's, I think, a good thing in the sense that you want to have collaboration, usually in smaller teams. You can order the teams that are your favorites. And I would encourage, Christian, if you could just click on Sales Operation and drag it up above, you can see that you can order these in any way that you want. And then for the channels, you can choose which channel you've set as a favorite. So for example, channels that aren't favorites are put into the more bucket. There's an example of that on the marketing team. And Christian, if you could click on the more channel and then make that hidden channel a favorite, people can see that you can add that to the lineup of channels. And I'm not seeing Christian doing that. Christian, can you hear me okay? Ruby, can you hear me okay?
You check your.
But other folks can. I can hear some other chatter. Great, other folks can hear me.
I can hear you.
For some reason, Christian and Ruby do not seem to be able to hear me, which is a shame, since they're my co-presenters.
I can hear you, Bill. I just think that maybe the screen is frozen.
Oh, okay. Or the fact that Christian hasn't responded makes me concerned that there might be something wrong with his connection.
Do you want me to present?
Yeah, could you present? That would be great.
Yes, I will. Let me try.
I suspect Christian may have to exit and rejoin as well to refresh his. Great, thank you very much. So, as I was saying, yeah, so you can click on channel and not make it a favorite. So I can see there's one been revealed in the marketing channel. Could you unfavorite one of the channels just to show how you can customize your list of channels? There we go. And the channels are listed in alphanumeric order after the general channel. So that explains that order. And there's actually a way, I'll show you in a little bit, to impose a sort order on your channels. All right, now let's talk about the left rail. Could you click on the Contoso reseller channel in sales operations? Thank you, Ruby. Okay, so looking at the main arena, let's go from top to bottom. At the top, there's a search box, and that is a great place to get up to speed on a team that's already been going on, because you can easily search for topics. So for example, well, we'll do a search later on. Immediately beneath the search box is the breadcrumbs or the navigation bar. And this shows you that you're in the sales operation team and in the Contoso reseller channel. The star shows that this is one of your favorites. And then the ... is the more menu associated with this particular channel. Beneath the navigation bar is the conversation and files. That is the tab line. So there's a number of tabs, and the plus is a way of adding additional tabs. Then beneath that is sort of the body of the main arena, and there we can see 3 threads in this conversation. There's one from Marcus that starts in French, but it's listed as important. And you'll notice there's a reply box at the bottom of that thread. There's a message that's been deleted, and then there is a thread from Jamie Redding on call volume. And you'll notice there's quite a few replies there. If you could click to expand that thread. Teams does a pretty clever way of compressing your threads, so typically showing the last and the first. And Ruby, if you wouldn't mind, could you click on the reply there just to show how you can add to that thread? Thank you. And then at the very bottom of the main arena is a compose box. And Julia, I will answer your question about searching in a moment. But at the bottom is a compose box, and we'll work with that. But that's how you start a new thread. And you'll notice that the compose box has this helpful reminder about doing an @mention. And that's a really important message I want to convey to all of you today, that Teams is designed for people to @mention individuals who are who need to read a particular post. And this is important because today we have, we each have an inbox, and we use that as our primary way of tracking information. when you start to adopt teams, you might get on 2 or 3 teams and it's pretty manageable to read each channel every day. But when you get to the point I am, where I'm on a dozen teams and together they might have 400 channels, there's no way I can stay on top of all that information. But we have a culture where we individually @mention people who need to read a particular post. And as a result, I can go to my activity app and I can quickly find the information I need to read or respond to right away. So if you've used @mentions and following channels appropriately, you will only have to go to your activity app in order to find all the relevant conversations in Teams. All right, well, let's go through the process of creating a new team. At the bottom of the left rail is a Join or Create Team button. Let's click on that. And this brings up a view of all the public teams. And I guess at Valorum there aren't any public teams yet, so let's create one. Please click on the Create Team button. And let's call this Training 5. I'm going through and muting the people who might have joined after I put up the no mute. There we go. Thank you. Let's call this Training 5. And under privacy, let's choose this as being a public team, which means anyone in the organization can join the team. You'll also notice that there is a link below to create a team from an existing Office 365 group. So if you have Office 365 groups, you can convert them into teams, which is helpful. But let's click Next. So we'll create a new team. And let's add Christian to this team. And I think it's important whenever you're creating a team, even a public team, that you have at least 2 owners for the team. So let's add him, and then we'll promote him from being a member to being a team owner. So right next to the member there's a caret, and if you click on owner, now we have a second owner. Great. And Chris, are you back? Can you hear us okay?
Yes, I'm back. I can hear you.
Great. Okay, and we can click close on this dialog. So Chris, if you could create a chat and like a few items so we can see some activity, that would be awesome. Okay, so here in our general channel, which is created by default when we create a new team, we have multiple buttons that helps the team owner work with their new team. So they can add more people, they can create more channels, and they can open the FAQ. Let's click on the Create More Channels. And since we're doing training, I think a key thing is to have a discussion about the attendees, so we can pull together attendee list, invitation list. So let's create the attendee channel. Attendees, I guess. And you don't have to number them yet, actually, if you wouldn't mind. Let's just do it alphabetical. I will number another one later. And don't worry about the description. Let's just add that channel. And when we add the channel, of course, we pop into that channel we just created. So to add a second channel, let's go to the More menu in the team header in the left rail, the ... or More menu for the Training 5 team. A little further down. There we go. Click there. And under this menu, we can remove this as a favorite, manage the team, add a channel, add members, leave the team, edit the team, get a link to the team, delete the team. But let's click on Add Channel, the third item down. Great. And we'll call this Budget, because money makes the world go round. Okay. And then I think an important best practice, especially when you're just starting out and maybe you're on the first project team, so people are probably mainly in Outlook and they're looking somewhat skeptically at how they might use Teams. I think it's important to create an urgent channel or an escalation. So let's go through the header again, add a channel. And thank you for entering questions. And let's make this a 1-, put a 1- before it to impose a sort order. I'm going to get to the questions at the end, but please enter your email address so I can easily respond to you if I can't get to the question during this. Okay, so we've got a new team, Training 5, with 4 channels: the general channel, urgent, attendees, and budget. And you'll notice that urgent has been sort of popped up in sort order because we put a 1 and a dash before it. And I could go through later and edit each one of these channel names and create a sort order by adding numbers to them. All right, let's click on the urgent channel. You'll notice that there is a 1 there on the general channel. There's a 1 because there was a post where Chris had put an @mention for Ruby. And you'll notice that a couple things. When we come back to this channel, there's a last red line. So Teams makes it easy for you to find the last place you were reading in a conversation. And there's a new post from Chris. And you'll notice that Ruby's name is in red, and there is a badge of an @ on the right side. And that makes it easy for Ruby to find the post where she was @mentioned. Let's give Chris a thumbs up for setting up the channel. So we'll give him an acknowledgement there by clicking on the like on the right side. And let's create a new post. So to create a new post, we go to the compose box, and we could say, welcome to the training team, and hit return. So that's a simple basic post. And Chris can respond to that post by hitting reply on the reply box that's immediately beneath the post. So that's adding on to an existing thread. Now to start the third thread, let's do this in a bit more formal manner. Let's click on the A with the pen underneath the word start. And you can see this expands the compose box into what we call the compose form. It adds a set of formatting options across the top and a subject line, which I think is really helpful. So let's create a subject line with the word urgent channel, because we're going to talk about this new channel that we created. And you'll notice that there's that helpful reminder to do an @mention. So let's start our new thread with a series of @mentions. In general, if you're starting a new thread, there should be some @mentions, either the beginning or the end of your post. Let's start at the beginning, and we will do @Chris and do an individual @mention, which is my preference whenever I am doing @mentions, to @mention people individually. And let's backspace over his last name to keep it informal, comma, and then @, and start to type the word channel. And you'll see that that fills in the word general, which is the name of this particular channel. So in this case, I'm doing an @mention to everyone who has this channel as a favorite, hit comma, and then we'll do an @mention for the whole team. So @mention, start to type the word team, and you'll see it puts in the word training. Great. And the way I think about it is, if you individually @mention someone, that's the equivalent of putting them on the to line. If you have a channel @mention, that's kind of the equivalent of putting a whole alias on a CC line, or an individual on a CC line. And then if you use an team @mention, in a sense, you're putting an alias or a distribution list on a CC line. So I really emphasize the use of individual @mentions. Now you'll notice that Ruby hit a return and it did not send the message. In a simple message in the compose box or reply box, if you don't hit the A with the pen, then you'll have you'll send whenever you return. But in this case, Ruby's hit return and it hasn't sent the message. And I'll show you in a minute how to do that. So let's say, I've created an urgent channel to keep us all on the same page. and then you can hit return one more time. Please follow it. Great. Okay. Now, when you compose a message, you can leave it in draft form for a little while, but there's some risk. If we do an update on the back end and we're constantly adding new features, you might lose a message that's in this draft form. So just be aware, if you're doing a really long message, you might want to mark it as a draft and just send it, and then come back to it and edit it. I'll show you how to do that as well. So let's go to the urgent channel and show everyone how to follow a channel. So to follow a channel, we go to the More menu associated with that particular channel, and you can see it sort of hidden there in the right side. And for the Channel More menu, we can remove it as a favorite. We can edit the channel, add connectors, get an email address to the channel, get a link to the channel, delete the channel, and then let's click on that last item to follow the channel. So when you follow a channel, every time someone posts in the channel, you will get a notification in activity. And if you're not on top of your teams, you're not on activity as often as you should be, then you'll get an email message in your inbox. So encouraging everyone to follow an urgent or escalations channel is a great way to pull people from Outlook into Teams. So you have a lively discussion, good collaboration in Teams. Now let's do one more thing, and this time, Ruby, I want you to go up to the More menu right in the main arena. So right there, correct. And let's get a link to the channel. It's the last one of the items. So we'll get a link and copy this into your clipboard. All right. Now to go back to General, let's use the back buttons in the upper left. And these are just like in a browser, so you can go back and forward in using these navigation arrows, and it makes it easy to switch back and forth to find where you were. So let's take advantage of the highlighting or the formatting features and select the word urgent channel in the body of the message. Great, and let's insert the hyperlink using the icon that looks like two links of a chain. Perfect. Okay. Paste that in there and click Insert. And now we have a hyperlink in our post. And you can see the font color has changed a little bit, but it's subtle. So let's use some of the formatting options, selecting Urgent Channel one more time to make it more obvious that this is clickable. We can use the bold, the B for bold, and the U for underline. Great. And then let's use the A with the line under it and change that font color to something else that makes it stand out a bit more. Perfect. Okay. And now if you click off it, people can see the formatting of the text. Great. Okay, that looks good. And we have sort of a direct request at the end. So let's highlight that. So the nice thing in using all these formatting options is you can make these messages easier to scan. Use the icon that looks like a highlighting pen. There we go, and choose one of those colors. Excellent. Okay, great. Now let's hit return, and whenever I make a direct request in these sort of open forms, I like to soften it a little bit with some of the fun features in Teams. On the bottom, there are 3 of them. Let's go to the one that's a smiley face with a circle around it, and choose one of these emojis to insert. Excellent. We can hit return. And now let's add a sticker. That's the smiley face with a box. These are editable memes, so you can change the you can choose one of these memes and then insert some text. So that's a good one. I like that. Okay, great. That's a good sticker. And then let's finally add a Giphy. Let's do a search for the word thanks. and choose one of these GIFs. Excellent. Okay, good. Now to send, when you're in this compose form, you need to click on the paper airplane icon lower right. And great, now let's scroll up so we can really appreciate everything you've done here. You've created an urgent subject line. You've done 3 @mentions. You've got some formatting of the text, hyperlinks, etc. And then you've inserted emoticons or emojis, a sticker, and a fun Giphy. And you'll notice that there's a badge on the right, which is because you did an @mention for the team. And let's hover a little bit over to see the More menu, and let's edit this message. So we can go in and we can edit the message, and we can, for example, make this important. So see the exclamation mark icon? Let's click on that, and now let's hit the paper airplane icon one more time and send it. And Chris, if you could make an important message without an @mention, just an important message in the urgent channel, I'd appreciate it. So we can see that there's now an exclamation mark badge on the right side, and a red line, and the text important inserted at the top. Excellent. Okay, that's a good post. So I'm sure that's going to get the attention of the people as they join the team. Now let's try to get some other work done on the budget. Let's click on the budget channel. And let's ask Chris, so do an @mention for Chris. And again, to make it informal, back up over his last name, Chris, please review and approve my proposed training budget. And then we'll use the paper clip icon at the bottom. Now in the background, Teams is creating a folder for this particular channel. And let's find the project budget. Excellent. And let's open that. And that will attach this project budget Excel. And you'll see there's a light green bar at the bottom. And we're just going to watch that and wait for that to finish. And try not to click anything while that's happening because it's a little fragile, but let's hit send now on the paper airplane icon. And what Teams has done is it has created a SharePoint for this particular team, and for each channel there's a folder in the SharePoint. And we've attached the file, the project budget file, into the SharePoint. We've actually attached a cloud icon to the file that's been uploaded into SharePoint. And we can see that in the Files tab. Oh, let's give Chris a thumbs up on his completion of business tomorrow. That'd be great that he's going to do that. So let's go up into the Files tab, and we can see what Teams has done. And it's added this document. And you'll notice that this looks an awful lot like SharePoint. If you need to do things like set access privileges, or I'm just going to silence that person who's making noise. Thank you, whoever silenced them. All right. You can see that Teams has almost all the features in SharePoint exposed here in the Files tab. Access privileges and, say, an approval workflow, that you'd have to open up in SharePoint. But it's really convenient to create nested file folders and other things right here within Teams, and to view it on a project basis without having to remember, say, a long URL. And we can show all the different options for working with files by going to the More menu, or the ... associated with this file on the right side. And we can see that for each document we can edit it in Teams, we can edit it in the native application or open in SharePoint, move, copy, download, delete, rename. Let's click on that last item to make it a tab, because I think the budget spreadsheet really should be obvious within the budget channel. And the way to think about this is if you're working, these tabs are a really powerful feature of Teams. And I think of them as a virtual workspace. So imagine that you've got your project team together and you're all in a conference room and you're talking about how you're going to get this project done on time. And almost inevitably, someone will get up and start writing the key decisions on the whiteboard. And they'll list the key decisions. And then someone else will be, writing down action items for the individuals who are going to follow up on those decisions. And then finally, someone might draw a timeline or a chart that might be consisting of the budget or something along those lines. But you'll use that whiteboard in a physical conference room and think of those as elements that'll be used as tabs in this virtual workspace that Teams allows you to collaborate with individuals no matter what device or what place they might have to be working on. So a tab is like a section of what might be on a whiteboard in a shared project room. And we've got our chart here in Excel, and we can expand this out to really do some work here. So Ruby, if you could click on the two arrows there in the upper right, we can expand this out, and we can have sort of a detailed conversation right here in this tab. Click on the little cloud chat icon that's next to the arrows and start a conversation. And let's ask the team for feedback on the budget. So do an @mention for the team. And just say, last call to act for budget, to ask for training budget. Chris will approve tomorrow. And then send that out to the team. Great. And now we talked about a few things. Let's compress this again. Let's close the two arrows so that we can see a normal view. But this conversation that can happen right alongside the numbers. So, for example, someone could respond and say, "Hey, I think the postage budget looks a little low. We're going to need more money for office supplies and postage to get the invitations out." Someone can comment right here alongside the numbers. But this conversation that's specific to this tab is also saved right in the Conversations tab. So let's click on the Conversations tab, and we can see that this post is also right here within the tab. And say that we wanted to call out the decisions we're going to make. Let's click on the Wiki tab and rename that to be Decisions. And the down caret allows you to rename this and put in Decisions. There we go. And for example, in the project budget, we have some of our numerical data, and I think it's important for every channel to have a dashboard or a forecast. But numbers are part of every project, and a real strong feature of Teams is that you can have those numbers right alongside the conversation. But let's create a task list. Let's go to the plus sign in the tab line and create a task list. Now, this lists all the different applications that are available at Valorum for adding new tabs. Now, most of you will have at least the first two lines. Not everyone will have the following 3 or 4 lines. If you just scroll down, you'll see quite a few of these third-party applications are related to tasks. So, for example, Asana or Jira or GitHub, Visual Studio, MeisterTask, Reiki. These are all different ways of managing tasks, development or engineering projects. But scrolling up, we can see there is a a nice app included in Teams, included in Office 365 called Planner. So let's create a task list tab using Planner. And what's nice about Planner is it's just a simple Kanban board. I noticed there was a question about can you add a group calendar, and you can. So any website that uses secure HTTP can be added as a tab. So you could, for example, open Outlook using the web access or OWA client, and you could add that as a tab in a particular project folder. So let's save this, and this will open up a new tab. And let's turn off the conversation thread and add a task for create training budget as a task. And you can set that due date for today and assign it to yourself because you've already done this task. Perfect. All right, and now let's add that task. Click Add Task. I think you got to click Add. There we go. And then let's add another task that is Approve Budget. And we can set that due date. Let's give him till Monday. He said he was going to do it completion of business, but tomorrow's a Friday, so we'll cut him some slack and add that as a task. And then let's recognize that we're gathering feedback from the team. So gather team input. Set that due date for tomorrow and assign that to yourself. Great. Cool. Okay. Now, all of these are currently in one column, the to-do column, but some of them are complete. So let's add a new bucket to recognize that another column on the right to say that some of these are in progress. Perfect. And let's add one more bucket for complete. And what's nice about this is everyone on the team can see this status. So, Chris can update his own status, and you've got to drag it into the column as opposed to on top of the header. A little lower. There we go. Yep, there you go. And then in progress for gathering the team input. And then when Chris is finished with his approving the budget, he can update this himself with the training budget. So everyone on the team sees these tabs in the same order, and they can edit them and manage them, and it's really helpful. Let's drag the task list before the project budget, because I think over time the task list is probably going to be more important. So you can organize the order of these tabs, and again, everyone sees them in the same order. So we'll have team meetings, and we'll just walk through the tabs on our project channel to see where we are in terms of data, tasks, decisions, etc. So it's a really useful way to keep everyone on the same page. Okay, so let's go back into the Conversations tab, and I just want to sort of give an overview of what we've done. We've created a team, we've added channels, and we've customized the budget channel with a number of tabs. But if we click on, for example, the attendees channel, you can see that it doesn't have the decision, it's still called Wiki. It doesn't have all the different tabs. So we're doing this on a per channel basis, this level of customization. And again, we can add any third-party service we want as well. So for example, on this page, let's click plus to add a website. And click for a website. And let's call this calendar. And if we had an OWA calendar, we could enter that. Let's just put in, let's say, the Valorum website, https://Valorum. think it's got to be forward slashes. Sorry, I think those are backslashes, aren't they? Yeah, let's try forward slashes. There we go. I think it might be form www. Let's try that. Yeah, that works. Okay, click save. And you know, it just shows that really any web service that you wanted to add, you could add as a tab. That's just one quick example. Okay, so now let's talk about some of the other applications in the app bar. And for example, you'll notice in the upper right that the activity app has a number 2 on it. So that we call those pill counts, and that shows that there are 2 times that Chris has mentioned, or I should better say, better way to say that is 2 times Ruby has been mentioned, and one of them is pretty obvious. It's in the general channel. We can see when a channel has new content that you haven't read yet, the font turns to bold, and if there's an @mention, there's a 1 or 2 or whatever number of @mentions on the right side of the white column. You'll also see that the urgent channel has a post, and there's an exclamation mark showing that it is an important post. So let's click on the activity app in order to process all of those areas of Teams that we need to stay on top of. And typically, first thing in the morning, several times during the day, I'll be going through activity and processing all the places where people have responded to earlier threads, where I'm following a channel, where I've been mentioned. And each one of those can be displayed or filtered using the icon that looks like a funnel at the top. And the bold items are those I haven't read yet. So let's click on those and let's look for all the places you've been following, for example. Yeah, choose following, and this filters to the following. And here we can see the message from Chris in the urgent channel for an emergency meeting. Now what's nice about this is if Ruby was away from her desk and she didn't read this Teams, she would also get a notification sent to her in Outlook. So that would pull her in. So that's why I think it's an important thing to set up an escalation or urgent channel, and it helps get everyone who's on the team to actually use Teams. Okay, so let's go and filter one more time, and this time let's look for all the times you've been mentioned. So click on following and reset the filter for @mentions. There we go. And we can see that there's one, the third item down, you haven't read that yet. Let's click on that. And again, you'll notice that there is a last red line, so it's easy to find your place. And there's a badge, a red badge, for each time you've been @mentioned. So the item below the red line that has an @mention is where there's free donuts. Well, that's important. Let's give Chris a thumbs up on that one. And I'll bet if we click on reply, I'll bet if we look for an appropriate Giphy, let's look under GIF for Homer and donuts. There we go. Choose one of those and hit send. So what's great about Teams is it not only keeps you on track, but it helps build a little team morale as well. Okay, so that's the activity app. Now, maybe on these free donuts, we wanted to remind ourselves to get them. Say we're working on our mobile device and we're just coming in from commuting, and we wanted to bookmark this item. There's an option to bookmark up in the upper right side, and the person who sets the bookmark is the only one who sees it. Other people on the team don't see that. Let's also bookmark the item that's urgent that Marcus sent yesterday, and you can see that in the left rail. Yeah, let's click on that item and let's bookmark that as well. Great. And you know, the mobile device is quite useful, but often I'm using it when I'm commuting, so I'm not really able to do a full reply. I'll wait back till I get to my keyboard on my PC. And all these items that I bookmark are saved in my personal space. And to see your personal space, go to the picture in a circle in the upper right, and the third item down is saved. So let's click on Saved, and we can see the two bookmarks that we just made, and you can uncheck mark them either by clicking on the left rail or clicking in the main arena, and we can click on each one of those once we complete them and we get our donuts and we've done our budget. And I'll tell you, there's a real feeling of satisfaction when I've read through my activity, so I'm all caught up on everything that people are sending me information about, and I've gone through all my saved items. So even those items I've bookmarked to follow up on, I've cleared those as well. So now I'm really ready to do my work, and let's go to chat and do some work in chat. So chat actually is the most popular application in Teams. And we can see there's a few conversations we've got going on. If you could click on, let's actually find the T-bot by clicking in the search box. We talked about earlier about how the search box works. Let's type in T-bot. So this is a way that you can quickly initiate a conversation with someone because you can search in Active Directory for a particular item. And earlier we talked about how do you follow a channel. Well, here you can see the answer right here in T-bot. Here's how to follow a channel. Let's look at how to use bookmarks. Let's put in a question, how to use bookmarks. And T-bot is a useful way of finding information out right in the compose box at the bottom. Ruby, I'm assuming you can still hear me.
I'm sorry, you cut out for a moment. Could you say that again?
Yeah, could you type in the word how to use bookmarks as a question for T-bot? And to Dave's question, I won't be covering meetings, but I'll show you in a moment how to find out more information about meetings. So here's a quick question about this. Now, for example, we could add a question, just put in the word meetings and see what T-bot has to say. And here it talks about how to do meetings. But another way to learn about meetings is to either read the Help or FAQ tabs, but also there's the Videos tab. So let's click on that fourth tab. You'll notice in chat the tabs are different than they are in channels. You'll see that the third video, the one actually in the upper right, that talks about meetings. And scrolling down further, I believe there's one more video on meetings. If you could scroll down, Ruby. Great, and there's how to schedule meetings. So these are really short, efficient videos. You can go through all of them in about 15 minutes. And you can use these either to refresh on the items I've talked about, to find out areas I haven't talked about, or if you've got a new member on a project team and you want to give them a quick overview of Teams, walking through these videos with them quickly is a great way to get them started on Teams. Now, Teams is going through very rapid innovation, so we're really adding a lot of features, and a great way to see that is the tab. Now, instead of clicking on it, Ruby, what I'd like you to do is put a slash in the search box, and this shows all the different shortcuts in Teams. Now, if you want to really become a power user for Teams, I suggest you go through each one of these just to see how they work. None of them are going to break anything, and they all make it a lot faster for you to use Teams. And the second to last one is called What's New. And clicking on that will bring you into the fifth tab here in T-bot. And you'll notice that we've got some new features. Just yesterday we shipped how to copy a link to a post. Earlier in March, about mid-March, March 14th, we had a new feature for adding guests that could be Gmail users or any kind of third-party email service user. So Ruby, if you could just scroll down, and I'll send everyone a recording, by the way. Don't feel like you have to ask. And you'll notice that not only is there a description of the feature, but there is a link to a helpful website an article describing how to use guests in Teams. If you could just highlight that. So I encourage all of you who are interested in having customers, partners, or vendors collaborate together with you on Teams that you take a look at this article. And I just want to remind you that each customer, each tenant, can have as many as 500,000 guests on their tenant. So this is a really powerful way to collaborate inside and outside your organization. Great. Okay, so we've talked about chats. Now, I think it's important that you don't lose TBot, which is easy to do. Now, I showed you how to find it again, but to never lose it, you can click on the star next to TBot in the navigation bar, and that will set it as a favorite. Notice it added a new section called Favorites, so you can have additional, you can have certain chats as favorites. Let's compose a new chat. Let's click on the paper and pen at the top of the left rail, and this is a way to start a new chat. And let's put in Bill's name, and let's put in Alan's name. There we go. Okay, so this starts a whole new conversation, and in there let's put in you can do an @ sign, so you could say @Bill, back over his last name, comma. Yeah, you could add Alan in there. What training material do you have? And hit return. And I want to point out that when you're in a group chat, there is only 2 tabs. There's Conversations and Files. Now let's click on the chat with Chris just as a comparison. We can go over to Chris, the chat with Chris on the left rail. And here we can see that we can have Conversations, Files, but also there's the Organization, Activity, and a new tab that you've added called the Valorum tab. Let's click on Organization so we can see what the Organization tab has. And this pulls information from Azure Active Directory, and it shows where Chris is in the organization. We can also see all the places where Chris has posted by clicking on Activity. And Chris, if you wouldn't mind posting in, just say hi to Ruby in this chat. Oh, let's click on Activity so we can see. There we go. And then you can add additional tabs to a one-on-one chat. So let's click on the plus and, for example, add a website, or actually let's add a Power BI report. And this is just a powerful way of having, for example, a conversation. Let's call this performance metrics as the name of the tab. So, for example, if Chris worked for Ruby, we could track Chris's performance, and let's look at the opportunities. So say, for example, Chris was responsible for the lead pipeline for the company, and in their regular one-on-one, say every week or a couple times a month, they could get together, have a conversation, and then they could review these performance metrics together. So it's a great way to drive productivity, to have all of the information you need in one place. And if you click on the Valorum tab, that's an example of a website that's been added. But really, any HTTPS service could be added. So this could go to Google Docs, this could go to Project Online, and these are all in one convenient place. Let's click on the Conversations tab, because I can see Chris just posted about the budget. And you could, respond, still gathering team feedback. And really, the conversations are very similar to the way they are in a channel, but you'll notice that there are not threads. It's just back and forth. So it's an unthreaded discussion. And you also should be aware that the Files channel, the Files tab, goes to OneDrive for Business instead of into SharePoint. And there's a limit actually on how many files, or I should say, how many people you can share files with in OneDrive for Business of 20. And that's the maximum number of people you can have in a group chat. Now, clicking on the conversation with Alan and Bill, for example, you can rename group chats. So, for example, there's that pen at the top of the navigation bar, and you could name this training materials. And you can have a conversation about them and click Save. You'll notice that now this is a new channel, and we could set it as a favorite, so it's one that the three of you can collaborate on outside of the team structure, but obviously this is related to your project. So we only have a couple minutes left, and I just want to show some other ways that you can customize teams. So Ruby, if you could go up to your profile picture in the upper right, and I just want people to see that you can set your access, you can set your presence, you can go to the saved features, which we talked about. There's a number of options around checking for updates, downloading the mobile app, keyboard shortcuts, etc. But let's click on settings and show people the dark theme. So the dark theme is just more restful on your eyes. It's not as easy to demo as the regular or default theme, but some people find this really helpful. If you click on back on default, we can go into notifications. And this is something I encourage people to do as a project team. So for example, you might as a project team agree that we're really going to focus on personal mentions and less emphasis on team and channel mentions. So for example, let's tone down the amount of banners we're getting. Let's go to team mentions and make that something that's kept in the feed only, so only show in the feed. And then for channel mentions, let's make that email only. So I'm really going to see, email or banner. I'm sorry, banner. Great. So for personal app mentions, I'm going to get an email. For channel mentions, I'm just going to get flagged, and then the team mentions will just be, noted in the feed itself. Other options here for customizing your notifications. For example, if you're working on something really important and there's a reply to a conversation you started, you want to make that something that you've got in email as well. So let's change that default to being banner and email for replies to conversations I started. Great. And then another thing I think is important is for email frequency. I think every hour, which is the default, is not frequent enough. So if you're just starting out, you want to have a lot of focus on the conversation. So let's make this every 10 minutes. You could make it as soon as possible. You'll get a lot of email. I think every 10 minutes is a good balance. And that way, if someone's got something important, you're going to get an email about it, particularly if they've put it into a channel that you're following, like the urgent channel I described earlier. So thank you all for your time. I'm going to try to get to all your questions. I'm sorry I wasn't able to get to all of them and respond in email. I'll also be sending an invitation to future events, so feel free to forward that to other members of your team inside your organization, and a recording of this presentation. And then finally, thank you, Ruby and Chris. I really appreciate you doing the demo with us today and all the help that Valorum is doing for Microsoft and for its customers in terms of automating Salesforce. So thank you all very much, and I think you'll find Teams a great addition to Office 365. It'll save you a lot of time, and it'll help you get complex projects done together with the other members of your teams. Thank you all very much.